And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. It is Army-Navy week. Historic games can be played Saturday at Michie Stadium. The first visit by the Brigade of Midshipmen to West Point. First time the game has been played at West Point since World War II, 1943. It's going to be a very special day. And we have a couple of folks to talk about it today on our huddle. We've got from our Sons of the American Legion team, we've got Jack McGuirk from Pelham. How are you, Jack?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good. And we've got Richard Miller calling in from Florida.
Good evening, Ken. How are you?
Good, good. And we've got, going around, we've got Conrad Crane from the class of 74 calling in from Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. How are you, Conrad?
Just getting fired up for the game.
Okay. Calling in from Washington Township, class of 1992, former offensive lineman for the Black Knights, Steve Chaloult. Steve, how are you?
Ken, getting ready to rock and roll.
Very good, absolutely. And calling in from Cornwall, New York, joining us tonight, first time in the huddle, is a member of the class of 1991, defensive lineman for the Black Knights, Greg Milgavero. Greg, how are you?
Doing super, Ken. Thanks for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Glad to have you with us. And really our veteran working with Sons of the American Legion Radio, calling in from Huntsville, Alabama, in the Beat Navy studio. And that is from the class of 87, Sam Houston. Sam, how are you tonight?
I'm great, Ken. Beat Navy.
Okay. Very good. Well, why don't we do a quick around the room about around the huddle on the game. Why don't we start with Jack? What's your thought on the game?
Oh, it should be an exciting game. You know, as you mentioned, first time since World War II that you have Army and Navy up at West Point. And what's pretty amazing is you were telling me on the radio show about the cadets coming up from the the midshipmen coming up in the Naval Academy. I think you said it was a convoy of like 100 buses.
Yeah, 100 something. Yeah. They asked us not to be specific on that, actually.
A lot of squids on there.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think they're trying to space out the number of midshipmen on each bus, so it's a lot. And they're all coming up on Saturday morning, long day for them, but it's going to be unique. The first visit ever of the Brigade of Midshipmen to West Point. So, Richard, how are you? What's your thought about the game?
I'm doing well, Ken. My thought about the game, I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I think with it now being played at Army's Michie Stadium, I think it's going to take on a lot more interesting aspects.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's go to let's try Conrad Crane. Conrad writes a weekly column about Army football and about each game. Conrad, what's your thought about this game?
It's always special, and this one will be special in a lot of other different ways. I think it's a pretty even matchup. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about our evaluation and go through the day. I think Army's got the edge in a couple of areas, but it's an even. I mean, it's gonna be a typical battle. I think. I mean, looking forward to it, and I think it'll get the publicity it deserves and the attention it deserves in a strange season. It's one of the few constants in a season of a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
That's what Coach Munkin was saying on the media call today, that it's just it's just a competition to the last moment of the game. From the first moment, blocking and tackling will decide the game. Steve Chaloult, how are you? Former Army offensive lineman. And Steve, what's your thought on the game going in?
Well, Ken, you bring up the most important part of this whole thing is the blocking, not so much the tackling, but the blocking and the offensive line dominating the line of scrimmage. Whatever team has the better offensive line, I suspect will control the clock and will score. So I'm looking forward to looking at Army's team to see where their offensive line is going to start with Connor Bishop at center right up front. And if he can control the line of scrimmage at the nose guard position, we're going to have a good day.
Yeah, no, the offensive line is key. They've been rested, which is something that Coach Munkin says should help them. And we talked to Shannon McCoy about that, and he pointed out, the players on the offensive line, the mob as they're called, how effective they've been for him and for the season. Now we're going to get the defensive perspective from Greg Mogavero. Greg, what's your thought about the game so far?
Thanks, Ken. Well, I mean, I guess first of all, I think that I'm getting butterflies right now just thinking about it. It's it's one thing to go to a neutral site and play, but to know that everything's coming to your house right now, I can't imagine what these guys are feeling. And having said that, I think that gives kind of a little bit of an edge to the defense, because I think defense is a little bit more about intensity and emotion, and so I think once they rip that Band-Aid off and they start that first play, there's going to be a lot of intensity out there, and that'll be the big equalizer to the Navy's offensive line. And I think, like Steve said, I mean, I think whoever's able to kind of be tougher in the trenches, offense or defense, is really gonna win the day. So the guys in the back just got to keep their heads sharp.
Absolutely. Now, Sam Houston, what's your thought about the game from your perspective down in Huntsville, Alabama, and your experience as an Army sprint football player?
It's Beat Navy Week, and every Corps squad has a Beat Navy Week, but the most famous of all, of course, is for the Fat Boys when they play Navy. This is basically the culmination of Beat Navies, and this year, the fact that the game is going to be at Michie Stadium, first time since 1943, for me, it is kind of reminiscent of when I played sprint, which we used to call 150s when I played, because when we played Navy every other year, we played them at Michie Stadium, and Michie Stadium would not have a very big crowd in it because sprint didn't really draw the same type of crowd that the big team did. So we were having a quick discussion prior to the huddle about what it felt like. Did the crowd have an impact? And Steve made a good comment, and very true, and that is that as soon as the first snap's made, any pregame jitters are aside, and you're not thinking about the crowd. You are thinking about the intensity of your brother next to you, always doing the right thing on every play and being accounted for to your team. And beating Navy, that's what overrides everything. And Beat Navy Week, I'm glad to see the transformation of Michie Stadium that's taken part this week. Some of y'all have seen the photos that have come out of Michie, and I'm so proud to announce that there's got to be some beanheads getting big bites for their spirit mission up to Michie Stadium to rearrange the wording on Navy's end zone to make sure that we know that it's the Beat Navy game. And so big bites for them, and good hustle. So yeah, very excited. Can't wait for that first snap on Saturday.
Yeah, I got to imagine they've got a few extra MPs surrounding the end zone 24/7. The end zone that says Navy and painted in blue. Quite a unique site at West Point. Okay, let's start talking about Navy. But let's start. Richard, do you have a couple of thoughts on the games last week? Just maybe a couple of them.
On a couple of them, well, good win for Ohio State, 52-12 over Michigan State. Unfortunately, their next game against Michigan, because of COVID, postponed. That'll likely cost them a spot in the college football playoff. West Carolina beat number 17 North Carolina. 49-8 over number 17 North Carolina got the win. Rice shut out number 21 Marshall 20-0. Marshall's first loss of the season. Number 5 Texas A&M 31-20 over Auburn. Texas A&M improves to 7-1. Number 20 USC 38-13 over Washington State. Washington State is now 1-2 on the season. Alabama 55-17 over LSU. Alabama 9-0. They should keep that number one ranking as the college football playoff top 25 all coming out tonight. Number 11 Oklahoma is now 7-2, beating Baylor 27-14. Number 25 Louisiana 9-1 against Appalachia State, which is now 7-3, 24-21 victory. Number 20 USC 4-0, beating Washington State 1-2.
And Richard, you have one of your assignments is to track the Pac-12 because Army's going to play in the Independence Bowl, the number 5 team in the Pac-12. Any idea who that might be in the standings at this point? Who's got a couple of losses, but is maybe 3-2 on the year?
According to the the number 5 team in the Pac-12 team in the South, Arizona State is 0-2. The number 5 team is right now. The number 5 team is right now SMU, Southern Methodist University. But
okay. Well, Richard, we'll come back on that one. But I think that's going to be something to watch because Army's going to play. Normally in the Independence Bowl, you play the number 7 team from the Pac-12. This year, because of a couple of bowl cancellations, it's bumped up to the number 5. But we'll get back to that in a couple of weeks. We got 2 big customers to take care of first in the Commander-in-Chief Trophy games. Jack, why don't you take us through a little bit of the Navy game last week where they lost to Tulsa?
Yeah, that was a rough one for Navy. 19-6 loss to Tulsa. Their Navy is now 3-6, and this was actually their 4th consecutive loss. Navy was held to just 153 yards total offense, 126 yards rushing, 27 passing. In the first quarter, Navy's total yards offense -4, and they didn't have first downs in the first quarter either. And they had 71 yards total offense in the first half. So that was a rough first half. And the game was scoreless actually through the first quarter, but in the second quarter, both teams came up with field goals. A couple of field goals for Tulsa kicker Zach Long, a 48-yard one and 25-yard one. And then Bijan Nichols kicked a field goal as time expired in the half. So 6-3 Tulsa at the half. Navy ended up tying the score in the third quarter on another field goal, 32-yard field goal for Bijan Nichols, 7:08 left in the quarter. Tulsa came up with the first and only touchdown of the game on a 66-yard touchdown pass from Zach Smith to Josh Johnson with 1:33 left in the third. Tulsa came up with 2 more field goals in the fourth quarter, while their defense held Navy to another scoreless quarter, resulting in a final score of 19-6. Freshman quarterback Xavier Airline got the start for Navy in this game, led the team with 60 yards rushing on 27 carries. He also threw for 27 yards on 4 completions. Nelson Smith, star halfback, only had 33 yards rushing in the game. Navy is now 3-6 as overall, as I mentioned, 3-4 in the AAC. 4-game losing streak heading into the Army-Navy game. And the big question for them is, at quarterback. If you look at recent years with Navy, where they've had actually, good teams, all those teams had really good running quarterbacks, guys like Malcolm Perry, Keenan Reynolds, Ricky Dobbs. This year they have a question at quarterback. They've Xavier Airline started this game. They've also had Dalen Morris, Tiger Goslin. So big question at the quarterback position for them as the Navy offense continues to struggle.
Yeah, well, let's go around our huddle and hear everybody's thoughts about Navy. Obviously, Coach Munkin was talking about the young quarterback Xavier Arline, who is from Wading River, New York, just 5'9", 165. Coach Munkin said Army had recruited him, but he chose Navy, and he's getting thrown into the action. There's also a quarterback who's played, a junior, that Tiger Goslin, number 2, 5'11", 181 from California. Why don't we start with Conrad? What's your thoughts about Navy and their quarterback situation?
I watched the game on Saturday, and I kind of leaned towards some of Greg's comments because the offensive line allowed a lot of penetration. I mean, if Nolan Cockrell can cause as much disruption as the center of Tulsa's line did, it can make a big difference on Saturday, because that's about the worst I've seen a Navy offensive line do in a long time. Obviously, that the Navy can do a couple different things. They can bring in, Arline obviously is their runner, and they can bring in the senior who's their passer, which makes our preparation a little bit more complicated, I guess, than theirs, because they pretty much know what we're going to do. But I think we got a big edge in special teams. I mean, Navy's, I think Zach Harding is a lot better punter than theirs. Navy's defense looked good. I thought their defense, though, when their middle linebacker went out, they weren't quite as good. He seems to be banged up a bit, but I mean, it's like you can see a lot of, both teams have offenses that have struggled now and then. Both teams have defenses that probably play a little more consistently. I think we've got an edge in special teams. But I guess it doesn't seem to me to be a kind of a typical Ken Newman and Lolo type team. I mean, they had some penalties that hurt them. The offense looked a little bit sloppy. It might be that they just, with all the virus and stuff, they're just not quite as drilled as well as they have been. But it'll still be a war. And, team that makes the least mistakes will probably be the one that wins.
Okay. Let's go to Steve Chaloult. What do you see in this Navy team? How do you analyze their offensive line and their quarterback and running back situation?
Yeah, Ken, appreciate it. What I noticed, and if you watch the game on Saturday, I noticed that Coach Niumatalolo, for the first time in a long time, he did a lot of instruction and with his quarterbacks, and not in a subtle tone of voice. He was
I can see that.
He was on the quarterback quite a bit. So he's in an area that he hasn't seen in a long time. And that is, let's coach the rest of the game because the quarterback is a given type situation. So he's a little bit out of his element right now. And offensively, that was a pretty good defense they were going up against. And the point I made last week was, when you're playing in this conference week after week after week in a condensed version, they've seen this offense 3 or 4 years in a row. They're starting to get a recipe on how to defend against it in this conference. Mm-hmm. And when you have an inexperienced quarterback, your margin for error just gets less and less. They had a little bit more success when they went to the shotgun and when they try to open it up a little bit, but there are some areas at which we can exploit. Tulsa didn't. The game was a lot closer than it needed to be. Tulsa didn't do any favors offensively. It looked like they had their gloves on the wrong hands. They couldn't catch the ball. They just couldn't seem to get into a rhythm, which they've been touted as a pretty streaky team. If they were consistent, the game would have been a whole lot different.
Okay. And Greg Mugavero, tell us a little bit, what do you see in the Navy defense? They look pretty aggressive in the way they play. What's your thought there?
Well, I mean, the Navy defense knows how to play against, an option team like we have. And it was already mentioned that, this doesn't look like a kind of a normal Niumatalolo team, in a lot of respects. But, going there with, what Steve just said is they are playing against some teams that are starting to kind of get used to playing their type of football. For us, I think that the key for us on their defense, in which I really wasn't seeing, is the penetration. I think that they're going to fight up front in the, in the trenches. I think it's going to be tough on the O-line, and I think that they're going to know what their assignments are. But if we can prevent them from getting in the backfield and tripping guys up, I think that we're going to have a really good day against them. I think that's one of the reasons why their offense seems so slow or kind of, a non-characteristic this last week, flip it over to the other side, is because Tulsa was able to get, penetration. I mean, so that stops that aggressiveness, that you're normally used to seeing those guys hitting those holes hard. Well, if you take away a yard of that, they're not hitting it quite as hard. And so I think that they're going to be in good position. I think it's going to be whoever makes the least amount of mistakes. But I'm confident that our guys can minimize the amount of penetration they get in the backfield and actually, win some ground against these guys.
Okay. And Sam Houston, what's your overall perspective? And Sam, you're a pretty well versed on quarterback play. What is the difference when you use a shotgun in the option offense, as Navy was doing last week? How does that change the offense?
The option triple, you're basically taking away the B-back dive, which is the first option of the quarterback. And what you're doing is you're opening up a couple of more options, kind of like a run pass option or a read option for the quarterback to decide where he's going to keep the ball. Instead of keying off of the defensive end or the defensive tackles, he's going to be looking for defensive line and the second level play that offers lanes that can allow the quarterback to choose an option to keep the ball and either run inside or outside of the tackle. So that's kind of what it does in opening up options, but eliminating one of the big options, which is the B-back option. But as far as Navy's concerned, they really have struggled this year, and I think everyone would agree. Think of four of their losses. You look at the total offensive point production, total 20 points total in 4 losses. And the past 2 weeks, the games have been closer, as Steve pointed out, because Navy's really been the benefactor of playing 2 teams who just showed up not playing very well, dropping passes, making stupid mistakes, penalties, making wrong reads, bad throws by the quarterback. And it's not until late in the game that the teams that they played finally kind of got it together and got a couple of drives together to put the game away. It wasn't a matter of whether or not Navy's offense was going to be able to generate the mojo in order to put the game away. They just weren't. And in Navy's case, we talked about it last week, the quarterback play for the Navy offense is so completely uncharacteristic of a Niumatalolo coach team, because they have produced some of the most amazing option quarterbacks that the service academies have seen in the past 15 years. That, again, I'm just going to say cautiously, that does not mean that they don't have something in their bag of tricks of execution. That doesn't mean that the quarterback is not going to have a breakout game. And they would love nothing more than to have a few tricks up their sleeves that allows the quarterback to get in space against Army. And so Army's defense is going to have to start by shutting down the B-back with Nelson Smith and Carruthers, much like Tulsa did. That allows them to pounce on the outside game and limit the quarterback's ability to have any open lanes or throwing space. And if they can do that, they can keep Navy's offense pretty much in check for the entire game. Now, on defensive side of the house, one thing the Army's offense does not need to do is let last year's Army-Navy game be in their head. I believe Navy's defense in the last year's Army-Navy game held Army to a total of maybe 150 yards of offense for the entire game. But understand this, even though it is a Brian Newberry defense, they don't have the same personnel they had a year ago, and they're banged up. There's one player on the field who they need to account for on every single down, and that's Diego Figo, their middle linebacker. The guy is a machine, and if he's healthy, he's brutal. He is not afraid to take a. He is not afraid to take a lineman out in order to totally blow up a play. He's not afraid to bowling ball right up the middle, to disrupt even just the center exchange on a quarterback. But he has been nicked up a little bit. But he needs to be accounted for on every play. If they can do that, I think they can get the B-backs in space, and that's really what's going to end up wearing Navy out as the game progresses.
Okay, very good. Richard or Jack, anything further on Navy?
Well, I think as far as Army on defense is going to go, they have to keep an eye on, as Sam was saying, the trick plays that might happen. Actually, both of these coaches love to go to their tricks. Actually, it was a couple of games ago with Navy. It was a play in the game where they were deep in their own territory, and Coach Niumatalolo called for a fake punt, and it worked. So you wonder if you might see any plays like that in this game.
Okay, well let's talk a little bit about Army. Army, the players have all talked about how bad the memory stayed with them from last year's game, and their desire to to get a win this year. And now playing at home, there's a bit of pressure to win, because as Coach Munkin said today, this may not happen again for another 70 years that the Army-Navy game will be played at Michie Stadium. And so it's going to be interesting. Just so many elements. We'll talk about some of the trappings of the game before we finish, but why don't we go around and just get everybody's thoughts on how they see Army, how well Army is prepared for this game. Conrad, you want to start?
I hope the team remembers the game last year and remembers how Navy tried to pad Malcolm Perry's statistics at the end of the game. I mean, that I thought there was a little bit, they didn't hold back at all, and they really rubbed it in there at the end of the game, and I hope Army remembers that.
I think they will.
I mean, it's been, Navy has not won a game since mid-October. I mean, not only have they lost 4 straight, they also had 3 weeks off for COVID. So it's been a long time since Navy won a football game.
Okay.
And I think if Army can just get ahead, and I think they can wear them down mentally as well as physically. I mean, again, this is not a Navy team that's used to winning, and I think Army is more used to it. But again, it's all being consistent. I want to get off to a good start and not give Navy any chances to build any momentum or hope. Then I would love to put our foot to their neck the way they put their foot to our neck last year.
Well, I think that's going to be what you remembered. One of the things I actually talked to Coach Munkin about this Friday night about whether it's an advantage to have 3 weeks off. Would you rather have had 1 or 2 games? Does Navy have an advantage like Tulane did, playing every week for a stretch? Steve Chaloult, what do you think what on that? Is it been an advantage for Army to be off for 3 weeks? What's your thought about their preparation?
I will tell you around halftime of whether or not that was an advantage or not. We can talk ourselves into a frenzy over that. And I watched the Navy game. Sam brings up Figo, the middle linebacker who does well, and he's been dinged. He's been dinged up. He hasn't had a lot of time to recover from that. I'd rather be rested. When you can dot the I's and cross more of the T's this way, give a little bit of time off for rest, and get your mind in the right way. This game is going to be different than the mental preparation for a Citadel where we were a little bit flat. I mean, this is our Super Bowl, and we're going to be ready for it. So, I'm not worried about that. We'll come out, we'll be ready to rock and roll. We can't afford to get, behind on turnovers or do any of those other things that we're not going to get the flexibility to have. But I would take the time off.
Okay. How do you feel the preparation is for those offensive linemen, Lucas McCleary, Mike Johnson, Connor Bishop, who you mentioned, Peyton Reeder, and JB Hunter, or I know they've had some changes, but how do you see that group known as the Mob being ready for this game?
So, I think they have the talent to do extremely well, and it's just going to be a matter of execution. When you're watching the sideline, the view, when the ball gets to about the 30 or 35-yard line, when there's a camera view right down the sideline, take a look at that defensive line and how much it gets dented on the front side of that. If Navy is holding that line of scrimmage, that mesh point and all of that is in the backfield and not going downhill. If you're seeing the dent at the point of attack, the center's got the nose covered, the front side guard and tackle are comboing off the 3 technique, and they're getting a little bit of a dent, which is causing that middle linebacker to bow his pursuit. That's how we get on schedule. That's how we get to 4 yards. That's how we get to 5 yards. If that line isn't bowing, if we're not denting it, we're going to be in trouble.
I agree, Sam.
Hey, Greg Moverio, what are you thinking about the defense and Army's prep?
Well, get an opportunity to watch Coach Tank work with those guys a lot. you know, I've been really happy with the defense this year. And I think some of the keys on this play, you know, are going to be, you know, from a defensive perspective. Obviously, I talked a little bit about, you know, penetration, you know, on an option type offense. You got to get in the backfield and take away some of that room that they have to hit you with. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if they wouldn't try to switch over to that, you know, that shotgun in order to take some of that away. But again, one thing that's critical for any team that's running an option is to be able to get at your linebackers. You know, you got big, ugly guys like Steve Chaloult that are trying to get out there and get a piece of that linebacker. And I'll tell you, if you see, just like he talked about that dent, you know, if you see it moving, you know, on the defensive side of the line of scrimmage, you know, same thing on our side of the ball. If you watch our linebackers, and if you see that they're getting tripped up, you know, by offensive linemen that are scrambling out to the second level, you know, then that's going to be trouble, because then that allows them to get the overload on the end. And you know, but if the guys up front, you know, can keep those guys, keep their hands in front of them and keep the offensive lineman down and ride off of those and scrape across, then I think you're going to see a lot of success, you know, especially with the pursuit that our guys have been showing this year. I think that'll be a really fun game to watch in that regard. But if those guys are able to get into the backfield and trip up that our ability to kind of bring our secondary in, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking a little bit with Amadeo West today on the conference call about the impact of Nate Woody and the different blitz packages he's brought to the table, and the way players like John Radican have emerged, Eric Smith, the two inside linebackers, and then the great play of the safeties, Markel Broughton and Cedric Cunningham. Army's defense really has come together this year. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really proud of the way that I think there's a kind of an attitude across the entire defense and not just kind of one skill set. They're all coming together and really, really hitting, you know, like kind of one closed fist instead of a bunch of open fingers.
Okay, now let's get to Sam Houston. What do you think about Army's on the offense? Two people on the conference call today, myself and another reporter, asked Coach Munkin about the quarterback situation, and he very adeptly deflected the question, and so we're not quite sure we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. It could be Tyree Tyler, played all of the last game, excuse me, or it could be Christian Anderson, who started the Army-Navy game last year, or it could be even Cade Ballard, who's really shown tremendous potential as a freshman. He's really a second-year player, and he may be back for this game. What's your thinking, Sam, on the Army offense?
I think Tyler's probably going to be the starter. And I'm curious, with all the time off, if whether or not Jamel Jones is back into the rotation, because I've always thought that he should be higher in the rotation than Christian Anderson, and think that he would be a better fit and more of a bruising runner to be able to play pure triple option against Navy. So it will remain to be seen at the game time. You know, once Army's offense takes the field, we'll see who's in the huddle at quarterback. Regardless of who plays quarterback, the decision-making by the quarterback has got to be decisive. It can't be tentative. The running has got to be north-south by every back involved. And they absolutely cannot put the ball on the turf. Turnovers kill drives. Turnovers kill momentum. Turnovers give the other team hope. And Tyler is someone who he's proven to be a tough guy. He gets in there and he leads and he runs hard, but he's also proven to be a little bit prone to put the ball on the turf. So we can't have 3 turnovers in the first quarter and spot Navy 14 points like what happened to Georgia Southern and expect to be able to come back with ease to take the lead and then pull away from the game. So Army-Navy game, as we see, is a game of momentum. And one thing that historically I've noticed about, especially over the past 3 decades of Army-Navy, and it's very unusual when you look at it, And I don't know if it's a mental thing that is much like the Navy streak that Army needs to overcome. But whenever Army comes into the game and is expected to roll over Navy, somehow they always manage to play at Navy's level, keep the game interesting to where it's a nail biter to the finish. But whenever Navy comes in and is expected to roll Army, they roll Army. They just roll them right off the field. So this year, if you just look at the past 3 years, for an example, 2018, Army rolled into the game at 9-2. Navy was, I think, 2-9 when they came into the game. Army was expected to absolutely roll Navy. But what ends up happening is the game wasn't even decided until the last minute and a half of the game. And it shouldn't have been that way. I realize there were a couple of calls on the part of the referees that kept it interesting, but still, there were a lot of Army drives that just stalled. And last year, Navy rolls in at 9-2, Army rolls in at 5-7. Navy's expected to roll, and they did. They dominated Army. So I think the real hump that Army can overcome this year, if they play together, they don't make mistakes, they don't flinch, they don't put the ball on the turf. I think this is the optimum year for Army's offense to completely dominate Navy's defense.
Okay. And certainly, one of the factors we haven't really talked about is the strength of the fullback position. The rest, having those players rested, led by Santa McCoy, who has kind of become the ultra short yardage specialist. Then Jacoby Buchanan has emerged as a very strong player. And Anthony Atkins, he had an injury against Texas San Antonio that slowed his season down. And so Army's got a lot of strength there, but they've got to diversify. They've got to show some other aspects to the offense. We were kind of kidding Coach Munkin about, when they put Santa McCoy in the game, everybody in the stadium is looking at him, knowing he's going to get the ball. And they still seem to be able to make the first down or the touchdown. Any thoughts on the V-backs from our team? Anyone?
Yeah, I don't think we have any fullback as good as Darnell Woolfolk was. I have not been as quite as big a fan of the B-backs. I mean, they've all got their role. McCoy's a great blocker. When you watch McCoy, he opens up a lot of runs for other people. And he's great at the goal line. But I still don't see a fullback that's going to break a long run the way Woolfolk would. And Buchanan will get you the short yards when you need him. Adkins looked like a guy who would be able to do that, but that injury has kind of slowed him down. I mean, I think we got a big edge on Navy in the fact that we've got Terrell Robinson. Navy does not have a Terrell Robinson. I mean, if we can get Robinson in some space, I think he can make a difference as well. I'm impressed with Robinson. We'll see how that goes. Again, the B-backs I think are adequate, but again, I'm still a Darnell Woolfolk fan.
I still think Darnell has a chance to play on Sundays. I agree with you 100%, and we'll see what happens if he tries out for the NFL after his Army commitment. Any other thoughts on that? I think that you bring a good point up. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I agree with Conrad completely. While we have a stable of excellent raw talent at the B-back position, there's no doubt about it. We got some physical specimens. I got to say, between Atkins, Buchanan, and Bernard, those
Bernard,
three guys they are some physical specimens to be playing the B-back position. These are guys that have size that could be playing at much larger FBS programs. But every single game, if you watch every single game, you're going to notice that at least on one play, there's problem with the quarterback B-back mesh, and that shouldn't be happening. You're going to notice that there are in every game, there are several plays where the B-back is hitting the hole running up right and not low. And that doesn't help a big guy. All that does is make himself a bigger target for the defense. And you'll notice another several plays where the B-back runs tentatively at the line of scrimmage, unlike, say, Nelson Smith for Navy, who hits the line of scrimmage at a full sprint and low. That's what our B-backs have got to do. But Another thing that Army needs to do, in my opinion, and I would leave this open for debate, but I know it's come up in several of our huddles about what Army's offense needs to be able to do. If they want to free the B back up and get the B back running in space, they're going to need to integrate some they're going to have to innovate some more of the counter plays into their offense, where they're using the A backs and running them between the tackles and counter plays where they fake the B back and counter back to the A back. And it catches people out of position and it makes them stay honest, because that's what's happening when our B back gets jammed. It's because the defenses they are completely sold out on the B back. They aren't expecting Army to run any misdirection, any counter, and therefore they completely sell out to the B back. Properly run counter plays, keep defenses honest. And if Army can figure out a way to get people like Robinson on a counter or misdirection, they can get that guy in space and he can make some big yardage very fast. And because the defenses now have to play honest, it's going to open up the B-back lane.
Yeah. Hey, what do you?
Sam.
Oh, go ahead. Greg.
Yeah, I would just to kind of jump in on that one. I agree with you, but I think there's a caveat that you have to be executing your base offense very well, and having some success in order to make that work. Because the only way, because they try to beat your overmatch on the strong side, by trying to cheat, and so once you start seeing that they're cheating, towards the normal play side, that's when you can catch them with those counters. So I would say that I agree with you, but only if we're executing our standard package, very well.
Totally agree.
Okay. Dak, anything for us, or Richard?
They have to execute the right game. They have to put together a great game plan. Continue to control the clock and control the football. Don't get too comfortable.
Yeah, that's what Coach Munkin said today. The only problem is Coach Munkin said, Army and Navy are really mirror images of themselves, and it's hard to change the game plan from year to year. They have to come up with some things. But I have a feeling they will. Give Coach Munkin 3 weeks and Brett Davis 3 weeks. They're going to come up with some things that Navy hasn't seen before. Jack, anything?
I was going to say the big question with both of these teams, as you alluded to before, is who's your quarterback? Coach Munkin dodged the question. Maybe he doesn't want to show his hand there. Yeah, the big question is who's the quarterback? And in the case of Army on offense, they're actually going to be playing against Navy's been pretty good on defense. Keep an eye on Diego Figo. We mentioned him before. On the other hand, you have a struggling Navy offense against pretty solid Army defense, especially at Michie Stadium. If you look at Army's record since 2017 at Michie Stadium, it's I believe 22-2. So. Yeah, they play very well at.
Let's get back to that in just a second, Jack, because you're talking about the atmosphere. I want everybody to talk about the unique atmosphere it's going to be on Saturday. But I'd like to go back to the point about opening up the Army offense. Army's got some pretty good receivers. Rican Donaldson, Michael Roberts, Isaiah Alston have caught some big plays this year. I have this hunch that Coach Munkin's going to put Cade Ballard in and look to throw deep a couple of times. Try to get the ball to Tyrell Robinson or one of the other receivers. Catch Navy cheating on trying to stop the fullback or the pitch plays. What do you guys think about Coach Munkin and Brett Davis opening up the offense, maybe using Cade Ballard at some times?
Very important, Ken. I think Army has to go deeper on some of those because if they don't, they will likely be more put in. They'll only gain a couple of more yards. If they control the game more, they've got to throw more.
Okay.
Only getting a couple more yards won't do it. It's got to be more. It's got to be more.
A little bit. Yeah. Okay. What's our alumni think on trying to open up the offense just a bit, take advantage of Ballard or one of the other quarterbacks' ability to hit one of those fast receivers?
Well, I'll tell you, Ken, I say don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay.
Don't do it. Don't
Just
do it.
grind it out.
If you look at we come out in Army Navy games very fast, and we generally will run the ball down the field and score. We got a lot of momentum. We can prove that we can do those things. Then we have to be consistent with it. When we start getting cute, a first down curl pattern, that's not Army football. We need to get on schedule, stay on schedule. That's 4 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, and let's move on to the next down. Now,
18 play drives, no run, no pass plays.
I'm not saying no pass plays, but a 2nd and 3 where they're jamming the lane with a strong safety and we leak the back out behind it and go deep, I'm in. But if we're going to open up the offense by trying to throw on first down, stop.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay. Anyone else?
Let's play some history. You look at the last 30 years. It goes back to some of the points other people made. You look at, again, watching Army Navy, been going to the game since the 60s. The team that tries the gimmicks normally loses. The team that wins is the one that plays steady, solid. I mean, during the streak, most of the games we lost, Army came out and tried all kinds of gimmicks, and all Navy did was kind of play really steady and wait for us to screw up. So I'm kind of in Steve's lane that I don't mind a quick out pass now and then that is going to be a sure thing and not get us off schedule. But I don't want to see open us up and wasting it down. We're not, the offense hasn't been consistent enough to make up for that lost down.
Okay,
Yeah.
Who's next? Sam?
Yes, Steve hit the nail on the head. I played option football all the way back in high school in the old wishbone days, and my high school coach used to say, people think you can't pass out of the wishbone, and I beg to differ. But passing out of a triple option offense, it's a situational thing. It's not your primary play. You don't go out in first down and start trying to do a play action fake and throw it deep, because next thing you know, you're looking at 2nd and 10. But if you're on you're on play 9 of what's going to be a 15 play drive or something, and you've got the defense on their heels, and you've got a 2nd and short on the third on their own on the other team's 30-yard line, and they are selling out. Yeah, sure, go ahead, because you're already 2nd and short. It's a situational thing. Now, I will also say that Army's quarterback rotation, it can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing too, because if Navy knows that Cade Ballard's coming in to throw a pass, then it totally negates the whole point of having a quarterback who throws the ball very well. If everybody in the world, including the folks up in the press box and the little kid back home who just happened to walk in and ask Daddy who's winning, knows exactly what Army's going to do on that play, because guess why? Because Cade Ballard's in at quarterback. All right. So really, passing from a triple option is a situational thing. It is, if you start being cute with it, if you start doing it as a gimmick, it means that your game plan is totally been disrupted, and you are just playing out of desperation. See the Tulane game, see the Cincinnati game for Army's season to get a perspective on that.
Okay. Now, I'd like to just go in and talk a little bit about, give you all a chance to talk about the uniqueness of Saturday's game being played at West Point, having the visit of 4,400 members of the Brigade of Midshipmen. It's going to be quite a sight. It says Navy in one of the end zones. Why don't we go around the room and just say, what your thoughts about the uniqueness? Also, the honors to the 25th Infantry Division that was fought in the Pacific, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, was served in Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, I believe one of my uncles served, who was from Pelham, New York. Dan Leahy served in the 25th Infantry in the Philippines in World War II, a very tough fight, to say the least. What are your thoughts? Let's go around. Greg, why don't we start with you? What's your thought about having this Army-Navy game at West Point in your stadium?
Yeah, so my heart is already starting to beat fast right now, just thinking about what these guys are kind of got to be feeling. I remember, before we went to go play Navy at Philly, it was just that whole ramp up, that whole week, really just kind of, I can only compare it to the first time I jumped out of an airplane, or a deployment to Iraq, it was just everything inside of you was just building up to that moment. And then for these guys to know that they actually also have to add in to defend their turf, that this is their home, that they have to defend. I think I would be throwing up about right now, and I'm really not exaggerating. I think that's about how much my nerves would be fired up right now. And just like Steve said, but once that whistle blows and that you make first contact, with the guy across the line from you, everything else there disappears, and it's just you and them, the mids, the cadets. You're not seeing any of that. You're seeing you're seeing the guys to the left and right. You're seeing your coach, and you want to, and all you want to do is perform, and fight and win, with your buddies, and it's part of me is kind of mad that we can't go watch it. We can't be in there to see it, especially me, because I'm right here, but at the same time, it's like, this is special for them. This is theirs. The plebes, kind of a little bit of a waste to the plebes, because they haven't seen what it's like to go out and fight, in an off turf place. But but for all the other cadets, this, especially the firsties, this is a very special thing. It's very private. Nobody's really going to really know what that's like. And I'm really happy for them. But man, this is gut twisting times right now, and it's I'm excited for them.
Absolutely. Steve Chaloult, you played in this game. Tell us what your thought about the midshipmen playing your team at Michie Stadium.
Yeah, it's so inbred in you from day one that you just the dislike for Navy. I had a physical reaction towards seeing Navy in our end zone. Just a negative. It's just not right. And there's nothing around. I'm mad as heck about it. And even though the game's there, it just represents how wacky and crazy this year has been. And we just need to go out there and punch him in the mouth. And that's what it comes down to. And I'm going to get Greg fired up right now. I'm going to get Greg fired up and I'm making the prediction. But these seniors, the teams playing for each other, they're playing on their home turf. They ask why you go to battle. They ask why you do these things. They do it for the guy next to you. When we used to go out, Jim Young there was a poem we used to read, Sir Andrew Barton, 16th century poem. He says, "Fight on, my men," says Andrew Barton. "I am hurt, but I am not slain. I'll lay me down to bleed for a while, and I'll rise to fight with you again." That's what it's all about this week.
We heard Coach Monken reciting that after the victories in the locker room.
Correct. And that is the mantra. The sign we had in our locker room, Greg Gadsden has that sign. He shared it with Chuck Schretzman, two close friends of mine. And that is the mantra of life for all of us, and it's a mantra for this ball game. It's going to go through ebbs and tides, and you're going to get dinged up, and there's going to be sweat, blood, tears. There's going to be, but lay me down to bleed for a while. I'm going to rise up and fight with you again. And
okay,
that's what this week's all about.
Okay, let's go down to Sam. Has played in the sprint version of this game and has watched it closely. What is it like for you to know that the Naval Academy and their 4,000 midshipmen will be at Michie Stadium on Saturday?
Like Steve says, makes me furious. I hope that they have a sanitation team to follow that skanky goat around as it walks around and desecrates our turf. So I'm just telling you, there are a few things in my life that have gotten me as completely angry and fired up at the same time, and one of them is the thought of playing Navy. Even to this day, when the sprint team beats Navy. I celebrate because we're all brothers. We're a family. And I know the football team, the big team, feels the same way. Though we may have departed from West Point, we are still part of that family. We are still part of why that program is successful. And beating Navy is more important than ourselves. It is something that transcends every class that comes through the academy. Beating Navy is ingrained in you from the minute you get there. They are our biggest rivals, and we will fight with every drop of our blood until the victory is ours. And it's going to happen on Saturday. And this is a historic moment. I dare to say there's very few people alive today who remember the last time, or who were there, the last time Army and Navy played each other at Michie Stadium. And let's not look back to see what the result of that game was. Let's rewrite history on Saturday by beating Navy and showing them no mercy, like we were talking about earlier. To have our foot on their throat, you know, like they did to us last year, give it back to them and walk away knowing that we defended ours. And Michie Stadium, that sacred turf has been defended by warriors. And those warriors, once they depart from West Point, will always be family. And we'll always celebrate when we beat Navy. And the last thing I just want to say is this, is y'all mentioned the logistics involved with bringing the brigade of midshipmen up from Annapolis. I think it's like 147 bus loads of squid. It must be really stinky too. But let me just say, it's not without precedent, because when I was a plebe, they loaded up the entire Corps of Cadets and the entire brigade of midshipmen in hundreds of buses, took us out to local airports. We flew out of Stewart Airport, and they flew the entire brigade of midshipmen, all the squids, and they flew the entire Corps of Cadets out to Pasadena, California, where they had host families out there to keep us. They took us to Disneyland and all this other stuff. But then, you know, then we marched down the Rose Bowl route. We couldn't do the march on because the turf was too wet. But the logistics behind it were just phenomenal. So, yeah, there's logistics behind bringing 147 bus loads of squid up from Annapolis, but it's nothing compared to what they did back in 1983 to bring both the brigade and the Corps all the way out to Pasadena.
Yeah, I remember that. That was extraordinary.
Yes, but again, big event.
Hey, Conrad, you're a historian by trade. Tell us about the significance in your mind.
Well, the one thing that we've forgotten here is the president's going to be there also.
Yes.
And I think that's right. Going to throw a monkey wrench in a lot of the, well, maybe monkey wrench is too strong, but I would imagine he's going to spend time wandering through the stands and doing some other things. Hopefully that's not too much of a distraction from what's going on the field. But that's another logistic twist thrown into this. Talk a little about the history. I mean, it's not just the 25th Infantry Division. Really, the most impressive historical aspect of the uniform to me is the 27th Infantry Regiment, the Wolfhound. They've got actually a longer history than the 25th Infantry Division does. The 25th Infantry Division wasn't activated until 1941. The Wolfhounds got their nickname in the Siberian expedition after World War I. I've had a number of emails from Wolfhound guys who say that, yeah, they still have a Wolfhound mascot that runs with the regiment in Kolchak, I think. That runs with the regiment for their runs and things. And then they also were in the Philippine insurrection at the turn of the century. So 27th has got a very rich history too. You know, we're 0-3 against Navy at West Point. I mean, but it's time to change that. The other two games were in the 1890s. We were 0-1 at Michie, but you know, this is the year we got to kind of restore some balance to history. I'll say that much.
Okay, Jack or Richard, any thoughts on this historic game at Michie Stadium?
I think this historic game at Michie Stadium is the time that Army comes up and play well. As I had heard, I think they're 0-2 when they play Navy at Michie Stadium.
0-1 at Michie Stadium. 0-3 at West Point.
They've got to defend their turf. This is their time.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of pressure on the Army team when knowing that they don't want to go down as a team that lost to Navy at Michie Stadium. Jack, what are you thinking?
Yeah, same thing. Army, this is they have to win this game. There's a big difference between playing the game in Philadelphia and playing the game, on your home turf up at West Point. And it's going to be quite the scene with all the midshipmen and the cadets. I was wondering if Navy was going to bring the goat to the game. It sounds, I guess, sounds like maybe they'll bring the goat. But I'm wondering if campus security is going to be keeping an eye on the midshipmen, making sure they don't try to pull any pranks while they're up there.
Thought about that. You let 4,000 midshipmen on the post, and could be some antics. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a neat situation. Why don't we go around and let's get some predictions on a score for the game? And why don't we lead off, Jack? Why don't you start us off? What do you think the score is going to be in this game? I'm keeping track of this, by the way.
Both of these teams have, on defense, been playing pretty well. And Navy's offense has just been struggling. And as I mentioned, they've had 4 consecutive losses going into this game. So I think it's going to be kind of a low-scoring game. And I'm going to say 21-14 Army win up at West Point.
Okay. Richard, I'm afraid to ask you what your prediction is. You've been right on too often this year.
I agree with Jack. I think Army is going to win. It's going to be a low scoring game. 24-17 Army.
44-17. Oh, okay.
24-10.
24-17. Is that what you're signing up for, Richard?
Yes, 24-17, Ken.
Okay, we're gonna look at this next week. Conrad, why don't we give you the next shot at this? What do you think the score is going to be?
I've only ever predicted Army Navy once, and that was the day after we lost in 2015. I guaranteed we would win in 2016, which we did, and break the streak. I'm not going to predict. I have my sentiments, but I'm gonna quit predicting Army Navy on the 2016 game. So I'm looking forward to the game.
Okay, you're going to stick with being 1-0.
That's right. I am.
Okay.
I am.
Steve Chaloult, you got a prediction for us?
I do. As weird as this year has been, it's going to be Army beating Navy 19-4.
Wow.
19-4?
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
You're thinking 2 safeties?
However we get to 4, but it's going to be 4.
Okay, that's a different one. I don't think Army's going to give up 2 safeties. I think they're going to manage the ball pretty quickly, but we'll see. That's an interesting prediction. Okay, Greg, what are you thinking?
Well, obviously it's going to be Army, but I'm thinking that it's going to be closer. I'm thinking someplace probably around 17. Let's say 17-10.
Okay, just a 1 touchdown difference. That's going to be a nail biter to the end. And Sam Houston, what you're thinking on this game? I kind of think I know who you're going to pick, but what do you think the score is going to be?
First, I would love to say that we witnessed a blowout. I think all of us would be just loving it if just for once we could just feel at ease midway through the 3rd quarter as we're just cruising to a bashing of Navy. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No, because historically, that's just not what happens when Army beats Navy. They always figure out a way to make us sweat bullets all the way to the end. And I guess that's part of the reason why we enjoy beating Navy when we do, because it was such an overcoming of adversity throughout the game. I don't think this week's going to be any different. Army's definitely going to win. And it's going to be sweet justice. I made the mistake of watching the highlights, if you could call it highlights, from last year's game again. And I was just so disgusted by the no-class attitude of Navy. There's just, like Conrad was talking about earlier, about how they were padding Malcolm Perry's stats. And so there's a lot for Army to have as a chip on their shoulder to get a little revenge in this year. So all that being said, I think the final score, Army's going to emerge victorious. We're going to defend Michie Stadium. We're going to defend our house. They're going to bleed a little bit during the game, but they're going to rise again and rejoin the battle and defeat Navy 24-20.
24-20.
Wow.
Okay, I was thinking you were going to have a little bit more of a bigger number for Army's offense. I'm going to say I'm going to go more the blowout route. I think it's going to be 31-10. I think Army's going to put the metal to the pedal and get their offense, crank out long drives. And I think the defense is going to really blitz, put the pressure on the Navy quarterback throughout, try and force mistakes. They've been doing that this year, interceptions, picking up fumbles. And I think special teams has been very aggressive. Andre Carter's had a couple of plays on special teams. So I'm going to go for 31-10. I think Army's going to win this one going away. And we will see the results. One factor we haven't really talked about, we should have brought up earlier, it's exam week for the cadets this week. So they're having to take what you gentlemen have sat through, some fairly expensive exams, and then get set to go to practice and do that a couple of days this week. So exams, I'm not sure. Does anybody know if Navy has the same schedule? They had exams this week? I'll have to check on that one. I was kind of curious if they were on the same schedule.
Yeah, I don't know if they had exams this week, Ken, but just a funny thing aside, I'm 55 years old, and I have recurring dreams that are just things that come up. And one recurring dream that I always have to this day is that it's turned into exam week and I can't find my gray trowel or something like that, or I realize I forgot to turn in something that was due. But I'm telling you, the academic experience at West Point is such that it will put the PTSD of knowledge in your head that you will dream about for the rest of your life. And I would say that my fellow alumni will agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
I will say that, a couple of years ago when Army went to the bowl game and played Houston, they came right out of exam week and only had a couple of days of practice for the bowl game. And we know what they did to Houston, scored 70 points on them. So they know, I guess maybe they developed a pent-up energy. But we'll see. Does anyone have a final thought before we close down our Navy Week version of the SALRadio Army Football Huddle? Any final thoughts?
The Army Navy football game always brings out greatness and excitement.
Okay, there you go, Richard.
You always have to look at like almost every moment, because at any moment there can be a great play.
Absolutely. Jack, anything? Any final?
Story I saw, Sam's been talking about the coaching situation in South Carolina. They were searching for a coach, and Jeff Munkin's name's been tossed around, but it sounds like they were signing, I think it was an assistant coach from Oklahoma who's going to be their coach. So, yeah. Yeah,
well, there's the coaching carousel that goes on in college football each year. So anyway, I think it's going to be a great moment, national television audience, millions of people watching, and very importantly, the service members around the world at military bases for the United States, throughout, I think, how many different countries does the Army serve in, and the Navy ships and Marine Corps installations, both domestically and overseas. And we hope that they can have some fun by tuning in and watching this great rivalry and rooting for their branch of the service. And, we feel for the parents of the players who can't get into the game this year, and also for the parents of the seniors of the Corps and the Brigade who normally would be there to watch the march-ons, which are such an important tradition of the game and an important moment for the seniors at each academy. But they will be doing the march-ons at about 12 o'clock. It can be watched on the CBS Sports Network. And then later, the big CBS will be going on the air to cover what they call America's game. But we just think of it as just an amazing day, the Army-Navy game. I'm so proud to have a chance to have a small role. And just want to thank everybody for joining us today. We had Conrad Crane from the class of 74, Steve Chaloult from the class of 92, and his teammate Greg Mogavero from the class of 91. Sam Houston from the class of '87 and sprint football, Jack McGuirk from our Sons of the American Legion radio team in Pelham, New York, and Richard Miller also from our SAL radio team based in Florida and our producer of this show. So again, we always recognize the 2 million veterans of the American Legion. We always say, you know, it's so proud that they have a chance to be part of this game, and we have a chance to represent them. So for Sons of the American Legion Radio, from my office in White Plains, New York, it's Ken Kraetzer.